Welcome, lacrosse friends, to Lacrosse Link, your link for all things lacrosse. Today, I speak all things lacrosse in the MLL, in particular with Brian Shanahan, one of the most knowledgeable people on the planet about the league. He's been calling games forever. Great to get him on the show. First, though, we're going to take a look at a very special story. It's the Chris Lesanko story about our Lacrosse Link colleague, Chris Lesanko. We're joined by Steve Hay and Matt Beers to talk about Chris, and it is quite a story of tragedy and triumph. And really hope you can enjoy part one of two parts of the Chris Lesanko story this week, and next week make sure you're back again for part two. You're going to be moved. It is a really it's just a great story. It's every time I think about it, I kind of well up. So we have the privilege of working with Chris, and I think you're really going to enjoy the privilege of seeing the Chris Lesanko story here on Lacrosse Link.
Beautiful play, Aaron Gray Eyes. He is having himself a tournament. He made the save regardless of the crease call, and that shows he is at his acrobatic. In the middle, it just bounces off, but it's picked up and scored.
Right, joining me on the show in a very special episode, I've got Chris Lesanko and also Steve Day and Matt Beers. And welcome to the show, guys. I'm really happy to have you all on. And we're going to jump right in with Chris's story, and then we're going to talk to Steve and Matt a little bit more. It's going to be a two-part episode, and you're going to see why soon, because this is a tale of tragedy and triumph. And we're really excited about the triumph part. That's what we're going to get to. But Chris, I just want to share a bit of your history. Before you were, I'm actually, can we even see your wheelchair? We can't see your wheelchair, but just before that became a central part of your life. So Chris was a star player in Saskatchewan. He led the province to titles in the junior and senior men's field lacrosse national championships, which is a huge deal in Saskatchewan that just doesn't happen every day. He was a four-time All-Star at national championships, a CUFLA All-Canadian, twice a top three scorer in the CUFLA League. With Bishops, he was a Rookie of the Year his first year there, and then a Male Athlete of the Year. He has switched to administration, multiple roles, including being commissioner of the Prairie Gold Lacrosse League, but that shift was not by design. It was, Chris, I just want you to tell us about what happened that caused you to have to stop playing, and what happened with you when you started trying to recover.
Sure. Yeah. So it was in my second year at Bishops University, just finishing up exams, and it was just a fluke accident, which ended up resulting in a C4 complete spinal cord injury. So absolutely no movement feeling below your C4. So it's midway through your neck. So obviously bedridden, couldn't move, heavily induced, medicated. Just pretty much thought my life was done and over, and living day by day, honestly, hour by hour at that point in time. And it was, besides having my coaches and teammates and my family that flew out, the days didn't look so good.
Yeah. Steve, I'd like you to jump in just for a moment, just to kind of flesh out a bit what Chris was like on the field and off the field before the accident, because you were roommates, I believe, at Bishops, right?
We were roommates, but he lived with a bunch of the lacrosse guys. He lived in the house with five other guys. I lived in the other house with five other guys. Chris was very dedicated. He pretty much, most of us would go out quite often during the week having fun, and Chris would come out every other weekend or even less, and he spent a lot of time just working on himself, trying to improve, working out, eating right, all the proper things, where a lot of the university students maybe took that little bit for granted. As a teammate, he was that guy you wanted on the field the whole game. He played a lot behind the net, just made everyone around him better. About that Male Athlete of the Year thing for Bishops, I believe he was the first non-basketball football player to win it at Bishops. They also voted him Male Athlete of the Year right before he got hurt. So pretty crazy. Like, that came out afterwards, and he was one of the guys that you wanted on your team. So
So, Chris, I know you took a while. We've heard the story. I've heard the story. Getting to work with you on the Lacrosse Link here, as you're one of the administrator for the show, and then you jumped right in to be part of the KUFLA board of directors. You're an assistant commissioner, and you're just constantly going, constantly doing things. And I know that wasn't possible for you for a while. And when you started trying to rehab, you wound up, what led you down to San Diego, and what was the difference for you going there as opposed to what you were getting in Canada?
Yeah, it was kind of I guess a reality check. I was walking around able-bodied. I was, in the weight room at least hour and a half to 2-3 hours a day. And all of a sudden they tell you, you can't move anything or feel anything. And I was getting 2 45-minute treatments in a day when I was in initial rehab. So right away, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, well, I was lifting 2-3 hours before. Now they're telling me an hour and a half. So I spent 9 months in traditional rehab. And I thought that's all what it was, because honestly, there's no book, or, you don't live it twice. So how is somebody supposed to know? You can do some research and whatnot on the internet. So I was really upset and frustrated with the treatment that I was receiving. And when I got discharged from my traditional rehabilitation, I found a place down in Carlsbad, California called Project Walk. And they pretty much worked with me all the way from my toes, all the way to, my neck, my head, my shoulders, my arms, everything. I didn't stand on my feet for the first 9 months. And the first day that I wheeled into their doors, they had me standing straight up on my feet. So I knew right then and there that this was what I needed. And this is what I should have had, 9 months prior to me wheeling into their doors.
What was the feeling like when you appeared on Difference Makers with Lloyd Robertson narrating, and I've watched it about 3 or 4 times, and I cry every time I watch it, because showing you getting up, you go into there the first day and they say, okay, get on the parallel bars. You're like, I can't stand. I don't stand. I haven't stood for a year. And you did it. I mean, it shows some of the rehab. We'll have a link to that on the show, but you have come back. You can use your upper body, and you have inspired other people. What was the feeling like when you're able to do that?
Yeah, it was remarkable. Never mind. Like the whole thing was they, stood me up on my feet. At that point in time, I couldn't even feel my feet. So you're essentially standing on air. You don't know where your hips are, your knees, your feet. So, eventually, like you said, all of that stuff kind of came back. So now I have feeling down my toes. I can independently move my arms, where before I could only shrug my left shoulder. So I'm on absolutely no medication. So one of those things people tell me is a miracle, but I say it's his hard work and dedication. And honestly, if it wasn't for people like Steve and Matt contributing each and every year to the tournament, and, other fundraisers that I have had, I could still probably be in that hospital bed, not moving, because it takes a lot of work, and it's just not my dedication, but, the amount of work that Steve and everybody does out in BC it blows my mind every year.
We are going to dive into that in the next episode. We're just wrapping up for this week, but we are going to have Steve Day and Matt Beers really chiming in about the tournament. There's a lacrosse tournament they put on. Steve, I believe, is the main organizer out in British Columbia to help to fund Chris's rehab. And it's not just Chris isn't just helping himself, because he has started with a partner, First Steps, which is we'll let him describe exactly what it is in the next episode. You're going to want to make sure you come back next week for more of the Chris Lesanko story here on Lacrosse Link.
Hi, this is Jaden with Al Anderson Source for Sports. Excited to tell you that we got all our new lacrosse product in for this upcoming season. Whether you're playing box or field, our lacrosse experts are going to make sure we get you into the right equipment to elevate your game. At Al Anderson Source for Sports, we know our stuff.
Hey, we're switching things up a little bit this week, and instead of having a guest and a rundown, our guest will basically be doing an extended rundown, because Brian Shanahan is the guy to talk to for things NLL and around the game. So we're just going to handle a bunch of topics here. Shanny, welcome to the show. Great to have you on Lacrosse.
Well, always good, Stamper. Good to be with you.
So we're going to start off talking about COVID and the National Lacrosse League, the impact it could have. So far, we've had Jeff Teat in week 1, then Corey Highfield, now Tom Schreiber, Corey Small, and Alex Krepensek so far, as we're recording, all in COVID protocol and missing time. The way it's looking, certainly around in Ontario, where we're both based, it's not looking great. What kind of impact could this have? How do you keep functioning? Obviously, the league doesn't want to be canceling games. You want to keep pushing forward as much as you can.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that they're right on top of it, and I won't go into details of some of the case of, individual people, but I heard with some cases, it was just people found out just doing a test, like they had no idea, there were no symptoms, but what, they got a positive test and they have to follow the protocol like they should, because then the last thing you want is somebody spreading it that, they didn't even know they were sick. So I think it's the right thing. I do think we'll probably see more of this. I mean, we're seeing more of it in other pro sports, and it's good that they're testing as much as they do to catch it right away. Tonight, the Rock is playing Philadelphia, and really the top gun on each team is out, Tom Schreiber and Corey Small. And then last week with Jeff Teat, and that, those are all key guys. I mean, you could probably say with Toronto, Philadelphia, they balance each other out maybe, but last week missing Jeff Teat on a weekend when they played 2 games, that makes a difference. That could have made a difference in a win or a loss. So I think it's just the way it is. Like I hope, and it sounds like the league, wants to keep going forward, and if somebody has it, they're obviously doing the right thing. But we know about the Arena League. Some of those guys playing in the ALL might be getting the chances they're looking for this year, because I don't think the league is going to pause or postpone any games unless they absolutely have to. And I think that's probably the way to do it. Yeah, if you got to miss a few guys, you miss a few guys.
Yeah, and you've actually led us into our next topic. I was going to say, couldn't be a better time probably for the Arena League to have opened the West Division, because this is going to affect teams all across the league. And, it'll be great to have those players ready to play, 6 in their hands. The Arena League East has been providing players to the NLL for years, but our item 2 in our rundown is the Arena League has had to press pause. They were going to play opening weekend and then go on and have a couple of weeks break over Christmas and get going again. But with concerns over it, Commissioner Paul St. John did announce, the health and safety of players, fans, officials, volunteers, everyone is the primary thing. So they're just hitting pause, waiting until January to resume their schedule, to start their schedule. So, that's a tough one, obviously.
Yeah.
But,
and
impacts.
It's, and I don't know if all the people that, watch this podcast would know. I don't know what it's like everywhere, but in Ontario, the numbers have just went ridiculously high in the last 2 weeks, really. Like we're going from whatever, 600 or 700 cases a day to 3,400, I believe, or whatever it was, over 3,000 last week, and they're predicting to be more. So I think it's the right move to put it on a pause, and hopefully we can get over this in the next few weeks, or at least blunt the rise. But getting back to the Arena League, I know the players have been told, be ready if you get the call to go to the NLL, because the NLL does not want to pause or postpone games, and that's where the players are going to come from. So if there are players missing in the NLL, there's going to be guys getting their chances, and I know for a fact the players of all in the ALL have been told, be ready, because they're going to use extra players if they have to. So I'm hoping in Ontario that that league could start up. But if you're going to pause, it's probably a good time to pause Christmas break.
Yeah.
It's probably also good in the NLL that that we're there, a lot of teams are getting bye weeks and stuff like that over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully things can get better. I am getting sick of it, but I think you got to do the right thing.
Tell me about it. I mean, we bought a property that we were going to run as a wedding venue, and we moved in
Oh yeah.
March 10th of 2020. We did not have any weddings except for ours. It was a doomed endeavor. We've sold
Timing couldn't have been any worse.
it. Could not have been. We've
Who's
actually
to know?
sold it and moved to Marmora. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, moved in the day before I'm recording this. So if I sound a little spacey, it's because I was doing a lot of moving yesterday. And
Moving yesterday,
ready to move.
Yeah.
Let's look at some surprises in the National Lacrosse League. And do you want to jump in and start with one?
Yeah, sure. I'd say a couple of surprises. One of them has been how dominant San Diego has been at times. I mean, let's see. So they killed Colorado last week, and that was after Colorado had killed Georgia. So yeah, Colorado week 1 killed Georgia, and then last week San Diego killed Colorado, and then they go into Calgary last night. I forget what the final score of it was. I think it was a little bit.
Yeah, for context, for what you're saying, they lose opening week 8-7 to Vancouver, to a team that had been out of the playoffs for ages.
And then that's right.
30 goals against teams backstopped by Dylan Ward.
Two of the best goalies in the league. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. Dylan Ward and then Del Bianco. And like at that, they were, when I checked on the score yesterday, they were up 10-3. And yeah, they have looked really good. San Diego has, especially offensively, the numbers they're putting up. So that's been a surprise for me. Maybe I'd say a little bit of a surprise is Colorado. That I sort of thought they'd kind of be where they have been the last few years, 3rd or 4th spot. They have a great goaltender, but I was surprised at how poorly they did against San Diego. I was surprised they scored a pile of goals first week, and then yesterday, Friday night, they beat the Panthers by a goal, which, not the most impressive to beat the expansion team 8-7, just barely get that win. So, maybe a bit of a disappointment for them. And in the East, I'd say that, the main surprise in the East for me, and maybe the only surprise, is that Halifax has looked as good as they have considering their injuries. They've played without Cody Jamieson, who was definitely their leader, on offense, a leader on the team, regardless, captain. Austin Shanks has been out. Reese Dutch got hurt last game. And, they've just picked it up. I mean, guys like Peterson had an outstanding game against the Rock. Bushi's played well. So that's probably been the biggest surprise for me in the East. So what about you? What are your surprises?
I'm going to go with Alex Bouquet and how well he's played in net for Vancouver.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Yeah, I didn't mention that.
Yeah, second in the league with an .837 save percentage. And this is he's had 3 strong games in a row. And that's the longest stretch of consistently solid play in his career. And he's a guy who's, bounced around, has had some bright moments, but hasn't really strung much together. And I mean, obviously he's not very well liked by a lot of, certainly in Calgary, and by some.
I know, that's right.
Yeah, didn't care for the hard hit on Carson Leung. I'm not a fan of that. And the way he kind of reveled in the attention after that hit, the hit that ended Carson Leung's career. So, but I'll tell you, it's hard to argue with the results he's getting right now. Can he keep doing it for a full season is the big question, but he's looking good, and that Vancouver defense as a whole looking better than.
And I'll add my surprises to my surprises. Is Vancouver's been a bit of a surprise. I really would say I expected Game 3 with an 0-2 Saskatchewan coming into town. I thought the Rush are going to demolish Vancouver. They're in a bad, ornery mood.
Yeah.
Ranked so low in my power rankings, and and I thought they were going to kill them. I would have bet any amount of money on, and the Rush did win the game, 10-9. But Vancouver looks like they're for real. And maybe a bit of a surprise is the Rush have been mediocre. They have not looked the Rush like, and I know they lost a couple of close games, and I know the Rush fans are angry at me for ranking them low, but you're 0-2, I give them an 0-2 ranking. And still, that win yesterday hasn't convinced me that they're a dominant a dominant team like we usually expect them to be.
Mhm.
That's still early though.
Okay, picking up from there, we're going to take a look at defenders. After the surprises, we'll look at defenders. And in the preseason, before the season, you and I and Bob Chavez at IL Indoor predicted our winners for the year-end awards. And for defender, we said, well, Graham Hossick's probably going to win it. He's been very good again. But if he doesn't, who would be your dark horse? I took Mike Messenger, and that's one of my predictions that I probably feel a lot better about than some of the others, the way they tend to go. Messenger's been amazing, dominant against Vancouver in that tight win that we talked about. And I think really living up to that. I also would point out Matt Marinier in New York, credited with 6 caused turnovers in that first week. He's got 9 overall for them. And he's a guy I was high on, but wasn't even sure he would get a chance to play regularly. And he's out killing penalties and playing a really big role for New York.
Yeah, I picked Steve Priolo in this, and that's mostly just my stubborn streak because I think he's been one of the, best defenders the last, 7 or 8 years, and is never gets the recognition. But I gotta admit I haven't looked at it really closely here, Stamper. Because when you analyze the defenders, you're not always going to see it on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
You've got to be watching them game in and out, and even when you do that, it's often the guy you didn't notice all game because he's made no mistakes. So I can't say that I'd have to look at this a lot more carefully before I think about who's outstanding so far. And I know you mentioned Messenger and not just the defensive game, but he's a power horse running the ball up the floor.
Yeah.
And this is what sometimes between the defensive players and the transition players, I think they sometimes knock each other out. Like there's been years where a guy is he going to win the best defensive player or like even Priolo I mentioned. I remember there's one year he was in the running for both, and sometimes I think, and I think sometimes it's like that hurts your chance. Like a solid defender who is just defense. My phone's ringing. I'm just gonna turn it off here. Sorry, buddy. Oh my gosh.
Sometimes people even do that before they start recording. You never know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, we're going
to
transition to, I'm going to throw one more. Matt Hossick, I think, has been really good, maybe playing as well as his brother so far this year.
Okay.
Great. We're going to talk about transition specifically with the Saskatchewan Rush. And they've always been a running team. They've always been very good at it. But in the game in week 3 against Vancouver, they won by a single goal. They were outscored 4-1 in the first quarter, outscored Vancouver 6-0 in the second quarter. 4 of those goals came in transition. Messenger got one, Garland, Jeff Cornwall, and Kyle Rubish. So, man, what a difference the offense needs to take on, but what a transition game.
Oh, yeah. And, coaches will tell you, like the 5-on-5 can balance each other out. You're not going to win games unless you get some goals from transition and some goals from the specialty teams. And if there's not a lot of penalties or the penalties balance each other out, it is a huge tipping point if you can get the transition goals. And to get that many in one night. I think it's bonus for most teams when they get 2 or 3, they think that's a big night. But to get 4 in one quarter, I mean, obviously that ended up being a 1-goal victory. That's why they won. But yeah, the Rush have always been good at that. I mean, not only do they have, the guys that you mentioned, are some of the best. You said Rubish scored 1, 2. I think of Rubish as a stay-at-home defender, not a transition guy. So when you can get, one from him as well, I mean, that is huge. And nowadays, you got to be able to put the ball in the net if you get a chance, if you're a defender. Like there's hardly not much room now for guys who only play backdoor and can't get a chance, or at least be a threat if they get a chance.
And you know what? We've talked about this many times, but let's get it out there on the record once again. We both, I think, agree, abolish the
I know where you're going. Yeah.
transition. You either play offense or you play defense. If you play defense, part of your role is to go up and run the ball in transition. And some guys will just do it more.
You know, I 100% agree with you on that. Get rid of that T. Just call them all O and D, and D score if you get a chance.
Exactly. That will basically wrap things up for the rundown slash Shanny on the NLL. Really appreciate you coming on. Anything quickly you want to touch on in the NLL before we wrap things up for this week?
Oh, I'm just looking forward. I don't know, you know, today we're doing this on a Saturday afternoon. You and I are going to Hamilton this afternoon to do the Toronto Rock Philadelphia Wings game, and I'm looking forward to that. And what a rivalry between those two teams. I know some people will argue it's the expansion Philadelphia Wings, not the Wings that have won 6 championships. But the people who live in the city of Philadelphia, they'll tell you the Wings have won 6 championships. The Rock have won 6 championships. So whenever these two teams meets, I think it's like they've got a historic rivalry. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be on the call with you. I think
Excellent.
we got to usher lacrosse back onto TSN in the summer with the World Juniors, and it's great to be back in the booth. It'll be my first time in a booth in Hamilton. I've been there. We did the Heritage Cup together.
That's right.
Sideline. So
I started. I did. Well, I played that 1 year for the Ontario Raiders in Hamilton. So it's fun going back and you know, to where the Toronto Rock started everything.
yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. Always great to get to chat. We'll see you soon.
Excellent, Stamper. Thank you.